America has finally decided to show who really runs the world. Trump explained why he is immediately starting, why the United States of America is immediately starting nuclear tests. Take a look. These are the kinds of explanations coming from the President of the United States. The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was achieved including a complete upgrade and reconstruction of the existing arsenal during my first term in office. Because of their immense destructive power, I hated having to do it, but I had no choice. Russia is in second place, and China is third by a wide margin, but will catch up within 5 years. Because of the nuclear testing programs of other countries, by the way, in the Department of Defense, the War Department values this. Here, the translator translated it as such, decided to start testing our nuclear weapons on equal terms. This process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. That's how it is. There is a response from the Russian Federation. Obviously, someone there got a bit nervous, and today Peskov, in fact, live commented and said that if this is a response to our tests of the Burevestnik and the terrifying underwater weapon, the Poseidon drone, then that's not what we meant. We haven't even started anything yet.
It's a defense system, but it's not a nuclear experiment. So here, the USA is a sovereign country. It has the right to act sovereignly. I want to take a moment to remind you of President Putin's statement, which has been repeated on numerous occasions, that of course, if someone moves away from nuclear deterrence, then Russia will act according to the situation.
So, according to the Kremlin's logic, Burevestnik and Poseidon, those are intercontinental ballistic missiles and underwater torpedoes with nuclear warheads capable of destroying an entire city if it's located on the coast, are not considered nuclear tests. Yeah. But Trump's statement about detonating something on his own territory in a specially designated area, that is considered a nuclear test, which is not allowed since no one has conducted such tests since 1996. But in principle, what is America's position? Trump is also commenting on this situation. He says regarding denuclearization, it's a wonderful thing. I invite everyone, including Xi Jinping and Putin, to join in denuclearization and to destroy their own nuclear weapons in the appropriate proportions. And then there will be no problems at all. But since, guys, you keep playing these games, Xi Jinping and China, you're building all this up and planning in about 5 years to match the Russian Federation in terms of power. The Russian Federation, friends, presents itself there once every 3 days. First comes the Stormbringer, and then Putin shows up somewhere in a hospital together with the orcs. Take a look.
It significantly surpasses the power of even our most advanced intercontinental range missile, Sarmat. There's nothing like Sarmat in the world. Ours isn't even on active duty yet. It will be on active duty soon. But Poseidon significantly surpasses Sarmat in terms of power, and in addition, in terms of speed and the depths at which this unmanned device operates. There's nothing like it in the world, not even close.
There's nothing like it. In short, Trump responds, and here what happens is we are quite militant. There is this Belgian Minister of Defense named Theo Franken, who just recently refused to transfer frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Assets that in one way or another are largely accumulated on their territory within their financial system. Belgium. And then you come out and say, if the Russian Federation even tries to launch anything anywhere, to press any of those red buttons, then NATO will wipe the Russian Federation out, simply off the map of the world. It just won't be there anymore. And with this very attitude, Donald Trump heads to Xi Jinping. And what do we see there? Smiles, some compliments to each other, but that's not enough. A long meeting, 1 hour and 25 minutes, and that's basically it. 5 more minutes, and that's all. And then comes out this kind of polished piece from the BBC, which writes about Donald Trump's absolute failure. Moreover, this concerns not only the negotiations with China, which promises together with the United States to help resolve the Ukrainian issue. What is meant here is Donald Trump's policy towards China, this pressure policy that has been much discussed, considered quite controversial, and which began back in April. So the BBC writes that Trump started the trade war with China in April from a position of strength and demanded capitulation. 9 months have passed, and now Trump himself is making concessions. Trump agrees to lift the punitive measures he was planning to use to pressure China for concessions, while Xi only withdraws his retaliatory threats, and only temporarily for 1 year. Just 6 months ago, Trump believed that tariffs would balance the trade deficit with China, and that restrictions on the supply of advanced chips, which drive the technological development of the United States' main economic and military competitor, would hold back that development. No, not a single one of these fundamental and significant issues for which President Trump originally started this trade war has been resolved during today's meeting. China is simply raising the stakes, restricting the export of rare earth metals and magnets, without which Western car factories and the defense industry come to a halt. At the same time, it has stopped purchasing soybeans from the US. This is pushing American farmers to the brink of bankruptcy. So what now? Trump takes action. Trump lowers the tariff for China by 10% down to 47%. And in response, China says, okay, we'll buy soybeans. And as for those rare earth metals, well, we'll see. Maybe we'll sell them to you for a year. That's it. So these are good news for the Russian Federation, friends. Xi Jinping did absolutely nothing. He just watched from the sidelines for all these 9 months of this pregnancy of Donald Trump's pressure, and that's it. Nothing came of it. And I mean Donald Trump. And Xi Jinping ended up in exactly the same position he was in before. The promise to stop the war in Ukraine. Then why does Trump say, we did everything possible, now we have to do it together? That's all there is to it. But in order not to appear weak, I actually agree here, by the way, with the authors of this piece on BBC News, but in order not to look weak, Trump turned on this narrative about nuclear tests. Because if it didn't work somewhere, it means it'll work in some other segment. And this segment obviously is that very escalation. China didn't take the bait, and neither did India. The Russian Federation, just like India, but even India didn't go all the way with the issue of partial restrictions and not buying Russian energy resources. They emphasize that this is the sovereign right of every country to act this way. And you noticed, right, today I relayed to you that audio recording with Peskov, where he says it's a sovereign right. This is what's most important for this axis of evil, if you will, or if not evil, then just something else. Alternative totalitarian. Yes, the axis of human civilization. For them, it's important today to refer to the Charter of the United Nations and to invoke sovereign rights to change borders, sovereign rights to wage war against Ukrainians, sovereign rights to launch missiles with warheads somewhere covering 14,000 kilometers. By the way, it's 8,000 kilometers between Moscow and Washington. Yes, well, a threat is a threat. Then exactly 3 days later, they start spreading stories about Poseidons, which are already there. Something is moving very quickly somewhere and is supposed to be there. 100 megatons of these warheads could wipe out San Francisco, New York. And what is Trump supposed to say to all this? Yes, he messed up with the customs and trade pressure, but it seems to me that now he's trying not to screw up precisely in this nuclear rhetoric. Where is the denuclearization? It's a wonderful thing, but for some reason it doesn't work. Join in and maybe we can do it together. That's exactly what Trump is saying. Now, regarding the other track, I just remembered about Belgium. So the Belgian Ministry of Defense is responding to Putin quite seriously, saying that NATO is not afraid. And this is perhaps the first time that a European leader has said something like, we're not afraid. No use, no terrifying weapons from Moscow. Since we have such a response that the Russian Federation will not just cease to exist, we will simply wipe it into dust. And all this is happening against the backdrop of something else, which is very interesting. Right now, there has been a leak from Radio Liberty regarding a peace plan that has been prepared. This is a working document that is currently being discussed, a peace plan created jointly by the European Union and Ukraine. It consists of 12 points, and these points are as follows. Within 24 hours after the adoption of the peace plan, there must be a complete ceasefire. Second, monitoring of the ceasefire. This will begin immediately under the leadership of the United States. Third, Ukraine and Russia will agree on a non-aggression pact. Fourth, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be handed over to a third party and then returned to Ukrainian control. Fifth, it is proposed to lift symbolic sanctions after the ceasefire has lasted for an agreed number of days. Sixth, during the ceasefire phase, it is proposed to establish peace councils chaired by President Trump. And the second part, which also consists of 6 points: agreement on the final line of contact, security guarantees without details. Kyiv and Moscow engage in dialogue to strengthen mutual understanding and respect for linguistic, cultural, and religious diversity. This is very crucial. Yes, this is the story here. And this is authored by Ukraine and Brussels. Next, negotiations are underway regarding the ongoing administration of the occupied territories and the gradual lifting of sanctions against Russia. And the last 12, well, sort of the sixth in the second part, Ukraine and Russia will begin to coordinate compensation for war damages. Now, returning to the point regarding mutual understanding and respect for the diversity of languages, cultures, and religions. Once again, this is authored by Kyiv and Brussels. Friends, we have a peace process. If it seems to you that it has stalled, and if your eyes are clouded by some kind of nuclear threats, then the peace process is actually something much more pragmatic, in my opinion, something that can even proceed almost unnoticed at times. But today, for many, it is unclear. So now I am explaining it to you, a very clear signal. People's Deputy Volodymyr Vyatrovich from European Solidarity says that the parliamentary majority, at the request of government officials, withdrew from consideration at the plenary session a government bill that was supposed to finally replace the distorted translation of the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages and remove the Russian language from the list of languages to which the Charter applies in Ukraine. It is allegedly being withdrawn due to pressure from unnamed Russian lobbyists in the Council of Europe. This, my friends, seems to me to be only half the truth, because if we are to believe the leak published by Radio Svoboda, the point about the fact that there should be a dialogue between Kyiv and Moscow, followed by a quote about strengthening mutual understanding and respect for the diversity of languages, cultures, and religions, suggests that today Kyiv is obviously, this is the bill that is disappearing, clearly making a concession to Moscow regarding the Russian language, as well as the activities of such an FSB affiliated group like the Russian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, or the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, in short, the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine. So Bory-class submarines, Poseidons, denuclearization, all of that is fine. But this kind of concession specifically is clearly something that was forced through. There's another point about how this peace plan, its chances of being implemented are almost zero. But the fact that such a point appears in it means that Kyiv is now taking a rather flexible position. They are starting to adopt this position. And here the question is, in exchange for what? And here the question is, in exchange for what Trump and Xi Jinping discussed. It's very interesting how everything is coming together. This is where I would like to hear a lot more clarification.